Yeah. So.
Yeah, I'd say probably. And yeah, there's a lot to talk about with Wonder Woman, but yeah, Iron Man 3 is a film that I think is often just kind of forgotten when people talk about the Marvel movies.
Well, and there's not a ton of connective tissue with the rest of the MCU, and that's something that I like to sort of hit on with each one of these. It is very self-contained, and it could easily just get lost in the shuffle. But that's too bad, because there, like we've been saying, there's a ton of great character stuff with Stark going on there.
Yeah, I feel like if you were to only watch the movies that have Iron Man in them, and watch them all in a day, you would see a really dramatic character arc.
Absolutely. Yep.
So, and other characters have arcs as well. I think Thor definitely does, but the most dramatic one is Tony Stark. I mean, he's in more of the films than anybody else, and he is kind of the face of the franchise. That's probably true, and rightfully so. That first Iron Man film, I think it was one of my favorite movies that year. I think it's incredibly solid,
it was.
And it was just so. It's so weird to think. I mean, it was. We're almost in 2018, so it was almost 10 years ago, and it's so crazy to think that there was a time when these Marvel movies didn't exist, and that for me and my friends, like Iron Man, why are we starting with that?
Totally.
And Robert Downey Jr. And Robert Downey Jr. as a superhero.
The first time I heard about that casting, I was like, my first thought was like, you cannot be serious. The Joker from Heart and Souls?
Sure. I mean, he's a very, very good actor, but I also just thought he does have a certain shtick to him that I was like, but part of me is like, well, I don't know Tony Stark at all. So like, I never read Iron Man, so I don't know anything about him. So I thought, like, I know that he's an alcoholic, and I think Robert Downey Jr. would be able to pull that off.
Well, and that was part of that was one factor that played very heavily in his favor for being cast as that character.
Yeah, that's true. Because there is this, like I said earlier, people bring all kinds of stuff into the theater with them, and your knowledge of an actor's personal life and struggles is part of it. It's one of the things that I like about the movie Bloodfather, starring Mel Gibson. It's a smaller film, but he plays this guy who has made a lot of terrible mistakes. He's done time in prison. He's estranged from his family, and he's just kind of off in exile in some like tiny desert town, like just giving tattoos. And then he gets pulled back into this thing, and like the film just doesn't work as well if that character's not played by Mel Gibson.
Interesting.
Sure. And so yeah, I agree with you. And along those lines, I think it's interesting that like Thor, in the world of the Marvel films, like he's from a world that we didn't even know existed.
Right.
And appropriately, he's played by a relative unknown. Like nobody knew who that was
at that time.
And so it's just like, everything about Thor was foreign to us, which is really exciting.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I think that's a good place to start wrapping it up. One last bit of business that we have before we sign off for today is our piece of guaranteed good news. And it's good that we talked about Iron Man 3 as of this recording. It's the day after Christmas, and Iron Man 3 is, I guess by default, the best Christmas superhero movie.
Batman
Oh,
Returns.
sorry. Yes, I stand very much corrected. You're right, and I should have known that because I just listened to Reed and Nathan on their Fear of God podcast talking about that just a couple weeks ago. But in keeping with the Christmas season, our guaranteed good news today is about a little boy named Micah Fry, and he and his family were actually living in a homeless shelter just a few years ago, and every day they would be given a blanket to use on their bed, but then in the morning they had to give it back. And, because the shelter just uses them. They're there at the shelter.
Yeah.
So anyway, their family turned things around. They're well off enough now that they were able to. He knew he would be getting an Xbox for Christmas. But he did some figuring, and he saw some homeless people out in the cold, and he figured that at $10 a blanket, he could buy 30 blankets instead of getting an Xbox. And so that's what he told his parents he wanted to do. He bought the blankets for homeless people, and news of that good deed spread, and Microsoft got wind of it, and so then they sent him an Xbox.
Nice. Yeah. So this kid, so what you're saying is this kid still gets what he wants and gets to look like a great person at the same time. That is how you do it, kid. Wait, is that the point you're making?
I think the better point is that, we should do nice things for people even if it costs us a little bit. And
then we'll get rewarded. Absolutely. I'm right there with you.
Prosperity gospel, that's what we're all about. Yes. Yep. Benny Hinn is my homeboy.
Obviously. No. But no, I love stuff like that. And it's one of the things that I like that you do on your show is like end on a positive note, because Lord knows it seems like it's nothing but bad news these days.
There's not a lot of it out there, but we like to hit on fun stories that we find. So anyway, hey man, thank you so much for being on the show. This was a blast. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Absolutely.
And that's going to wrap it up for us today on Two Geek Soup. You can get me on all kinds of different social media, on Twitter and Instagram at Two Geek Soup. The email address is twogeeksoup@gmail.com, and you can find us on Facebook too at Two Geek Soup. Two Geek Soup is recorded at Sound Mind Studios with production support by Lee Earnhardt. And even though it probably means that I am the apathetic hall monitor, this podcast is a proud member of the More Than One Lesson faculty. Thanks, Tyler.
Hey, you know what? More Than One Lesson is the podcast itself is on a break for a while. And so, you know what? I think you just got promoted, my friend. I think you are full-time custodian.
All right. All right. Well, thanks, guys. We'll catch you next time.